Good evening, everyone. Welcome to New Canaan Library. My name is Heather Cimino, and I coordinate adult programs here. And I thank you all for coming and braving the cold this evening. We are honored this evening to have Mike Hayes here to talk about his new book, which is called Mission Driven: A Path to a Life of Purpose. Mike, a former commanding officer at SEAL Team 2, White House Fellow, and Director of Defense Policy and Strategy at the National Security Council. And his book is about anyone going through a transition, whether it's a young person, recent graduates, professionals, or empty nesters like me. Beyond his military and government service, Mike is the founding board member of the National Medal of Honor Museum in Arlington, Texas, and the founder of the 1162 Foundation, which has paid off 12 Gold Star widow mortgages to date. Let's give him my hand. Awesome. And in the private sector, Mike has served on several C-level roles, and he is currently a managing director at Insight Partners. He lives in Sunapee, New Hampshire, and Westport, Connecticut, with his wife and daughter. Our wonderful partner, Elm Street Books, is in the back. Eve will be selling books, and Mike will be signing them after he finishes speaking. So before we begin, if everyone could silence their cell phones and note the exits on either side of you. And please join me in welcoming Mike Hayes.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. I really am humbled to see such a large crowd. I'm super nervous right now. I don't speak in public very much. Just kidding. That's a joke. Bad one. Let's start. So start with bad joke. Check. I've begun correctly. I also would like to recognize all of you and say thank you and congratulations to each of you. You know, when I think about what America needs more people like you. Why? Because look at this incredible building, and then really the spirit of the building, which is all the people in it, that your community has come together to build and for fellowship and friendship. So we need more of this in America, and I'm tremendously jealous and super excited to be here. So congratulations to each of you who have made this happen. First, I want to also acknowledge the chair of the 1162 Foundation is humbly and secretly in the fifth row, far right, texted me a few minutes ago, and my esteemed college classmate Sean Regan and his lovely wife Erin. So a really dear friend kind of surprised me and showed up, but I'm calling him out live. And I also would be remiss if I didn't recognize a dear friend, Tom Joyce. Tom is also a Holy Cross class of '93 classmate of Sean and mine, and Tom roped me into speaking 4 years ago about my first book, Never Enough. We did it at the country club. It was a wonderful evening, and you know, I would really, I want to start with a story in just a second, but to lead up to that, I would say, I recently did a podcast with Dan Woogan. It was on like 06880. I know in New Canaan you don't pay any attention to that, what happens in Westport, rightfully so. But it's funny because Dan used the words in a write-up that I didn't see before he posted it. It was wonderful. It said, Mike is a reluctant author. And I thought that's a really interesting way to describe me because it's very true. I've lived a life of hundreds, if not thousands, of once-in-a-lifetime opportunities and situations. And I've always felt that we're called to give back. When we talk about what is purpose is about serving each other. So, with 20 years in the SEALs, I've been shot at, I've been rocketed, I've jumped out of a building rig to explode, I've been run over by a Carnival cruise liner, I've been held at gunpoint and threatened with execution. I could go on and on. I've just written countless emails to my wife and now 24-year-old daughter, trying to thread the needle between, telling them everything's okay, but also me writing the email through the lens of like, what if this is the last thing I'll ever write to them? When you get in these vehicles overseas, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan, you think like, will I even know that I died? And I've been, fortunate. I'm incredibly fortunate and grateful to still be here. I have a lot of friends who aren't. I've buried about 75 teammates, and about 15 or 20 like brothers, absolute brothers of mine. So I carry a ton of weight with that, and I live my life constantly asking myself, am I living up to their expectations and doing everything that I can and should in order to celebrate life and the lives and the precious gifts that we all have. I'm often, let me continue to say that the Never Enough was the first book that kind of scratched the itch and said, okay, good, I'm done. I can, if in the unlikely event something bad happens, I won't have going through my head that I didn't share enough of my experiences with the world. And when I got that book written, I was like, good, I'll never write another thing again. And then it was gnawing at me with questions after a random talk or things like that. And somebody would say, well, hey, Mike, what does purpose really mean? Or what is meaning? Or how do you make it practical? Great that we understand theory, but how do you actually bring it to life? And I've just either been blessed or cursed with different frameworks and ideas for how to think about this. And so I had to write a second book. And I really wrote Mission Driven to make a difference. I will say that a lot of people say, Mike, thank you for your service. And the only thing I say back to that is, well, thank you for yours. And sometimes people who haven't worn a uniform are like, well, what do you mean? I wasn't in the military. And what I would say is, maybe that's true, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't have to wear a uniform to recognize that we're all here to serve each other. We all serve each other. We all have different gifts, different abilities, skills, interests, passions. And if there's anything that my friends and I want that have sacrificed so much, it's for people to just get off the sideline and take accountability and ownership for whatever corner or part of America, your nation, your town, your civic institutions, where you worship, whatever it is. Do you take ownership and really lean in and make things great and right to the best of your ability? And fully recognizing that we all come from different backgrounds and places and gifts and interests, like I was saying. So, how do we all lean in and do that in ways that are accretive and constructive, recognizing that we're all different? And that's okay. That's what makes America amazing. So, with that, I thought that what I would do is actually start with, like I said, a story. I guess technically I haven't really started with a story because I've rambled now for probably too long. I promise, though, as a Navy SEAL for 20 years, I've got a lot of different exercises. I've got fire hoses and pull-up bars and stuff outside. So when we turn to questions, if there aren't good questions, then we'll have the SEAL instructors come in and we'll really turn this into a different kind of atmosphere. So please think of your hardest questions. My wife and daughter will confirm I'm really darn good at one-way conversations and monologues, but that's not the intent. The intent is to create some surface area so that you all can ultimately ask whatever questions and have whatever fellowship and conversation we all want to have tonight. But I will monologue for a little bit and create some surface area. So in 1989, I entered Holy Cross College, and there was the head Marine there was a guy named Major Joe Dunford, later became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He had known my grandfather, who was a lifelong naval officer who was at Pearl Harbor on that fateful day, December 7th, 1941. And I immediately learned what service was, and I said, I'm going to raise my hand and try to enter this ROTC program, because as the oldest of four, if I can go to college for free, that lets my family be able to send my younger siblings to college as well. So in 1989, you'll recall a lot of what is in the news with Maduro in Venezuela. Back in 89, it was Noriega and Panama. Obviously, differences, but some similarities. And on the runway on December 21st, I believe it was, there were a couple of SEALs killed in action. One was a man named John Connors. John was a Navy SEAL officer, and as I matriculated into Holy Cross, one of my first experiences at Holy Cross was in the back of St. James Chapel, where the ROTC unit had to be present, while the SEAL community came together with the Connors family to celebrate the life of John Connors. And I sat in that back row as like a 110-pound freshman, not knowing anything about the SEALs. This is, of course, pre-internet, pre-cell phones, everything. And I just saw an amazing community come together And despite all the sadness, we've all at this point, in life understand, like, life is full of pain and full of beauty, and sometimes the two of those are very intertwined. This was very intertwined. And I just kind of went on my way. I will, again, go give you the fast version, which is 4 years later, I chose to go to SEAL training, and I was one of, I think, 16 people in the country chosen as an officer to enter SEAL training. One of 19 graduates out of a class of 120, and then checked into SEAL Team 4 in April of 1994. That, a couple months later, I was a new guy, and there was very quietly a 5-year anniversary of Panama, and the 4 SEALs who were killed on that runway were from SEAL Team 4, John Connors being one of them. And I raised my hand to just attend the memorial. We drove 3 hours up to D.C., and I had my uniform on, my nice shiny trident that shows you're a Navy SEAL. I didn't know anybody from the Connors family or anything like that. I was just like, I can be one more body that says thank you, and I need nothing other than to be in the back row and just be present. So that's what I did. Then, gosh, it was about maybe 3 years ago, I got a call from a classmate of John Connors who said, Mike, I'm going to try to build a statue of John Connors in his hometown of Scituate, Massachusetts. Would you be the keynote speaker for the fundraiser in Boston, right next to the USS Constitution? Wonderful night, black tie event, probably 3 times as many people as are here. And like tonight, I didn't prepare. I just was, again, like in college, if you leave it to the last minute, it only takes you a minute to do. So, so I got up and I did what I usually do is think. I think about like heart and head and think like, why am I here? Why am I here? And I felt so privileged to be at that podium, to be able to speak, and it almost overwhelms me even right now to remember like that very moment, because I looked over and I was kind of like today a little bit elevated, and like table number 1 had Mrs. Connors and John's 2 siblings, and I just remember saying, thank you to everybody. And I said, raise your hand. Think about the time that you've impacted somebody that you've met. Think about a decision you helped somebody make. Think about an action you took that made a difference in someone's life. And then everybody would think about it. And I said, okay, that's amazing. The world needs more of that. Thank you for doing what you're doing. But now, think about somebody whose life you've changed, who you've never met. Raise your hand if you can tell me right now about somebody's life you changed who you never met. And I knew it was a logic trap, right? Nobody's going to raise their hand. Nobody raises your hand. Totally quiet, and even some confusion. And I looked and I said, Mrs. Connors, I never met your son, John. He changed my life, and the reason that I am here today is because of John. I read about John. I learned about John. And I made a career decision largely because of John, seeing what service and sacrifice is really about. And so the reason you have at the time the never enough on the tables in front of you, and the reason that I'm even here is because of John Connors. And it was just really overwhelming to really think about what is a life like 25 or so years later. John Connors is still impacting the world. And I think, like, when I think about purpose or impact, I think, like, man alive, who have I possibly helped that I've never met, And I will say that is why I wrote Mission Driven, because I have a lot of things in my head or experiences to share, and my hope is to help all of us as Americans, as global citizens, to recognize that life is about service. If you really think about purpose, and trust me, from being on your being in situations where you really do think you're going to die. This has been very real thoughts that I've had in my head. You do not think about anything like money or career or working more or any of what we drive. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is people. Purpose is people. Now, I can't project what your purpose is, or I would never even think about that. So Mission Driven doesn't actually have any answers in it. What it has is questions and help people think about What does it actually mean? You know, my daughter's 20, my wife and I have a 24-year-old daughter, went to Staples High School in Westport, and my family's been through a lot. I've left home for 6 months or more 7 times in my life, and in a 20-year career, I moved 10 of the other years. That was tough. It was challenging. And my family saw firsthand all of these families that have sacrificed so much and paid the ultimate sacrifice. And honestly, here it is, years after wars have ended, they continue to pay that ultimate sacrifice every single day by missing their loved ones. And it's challenging, but my wife and I always said to our daughter, we never asked her what she wanted to be when she grows up. We didn't say, what do you want to be? We said, who do you want to be? Because you say, what do you want to be? What is a position, or it's a title, or it's like, what does society call you? None of that matters. What matters is the who. Who are you? How do you treat people? How do you act when things are really hard? What's your work ethic like? What's your character? What's your orientation to recognize when other people need help? And so that's kind of what we always drew out is to think, who do you want to be? Let me tell you another story. It's actually one that I wrote about. I see a wonderful copy of Never Enough. I can't wait to sign that. But I wrote about this in that book. But here's another quick story for you. In 2007, I was deployed for 6 months as the second in charge of all the Special Operations Forces in Anbar Province, Iraq. That was Fallujah, responsible for about maybe up to 10 kilometers west of Baghdad all the way to the Syrian border. So we had like about 20 different locations that we were going out night after night after night, and our job was simple. Our job was to stop bad people from doing bad things to good people. And it was not more complicated than that. It's a lot of risk. We're in the business of managing and mitigating risk, but we did lots and lots of things that needed to be done and should have been done and were done. But I'm going to tell you about a night that things didn't go well. We were privileged to try to find a young soldier who was in an IED, an improvised explosive device, where the vehicle was blown up. There were 3 young Army soldiers killed that event, and we had video from unmanned aerial vehicles that basically saw a young U.S. Army guy being drug off. And oh my gosh, that's someone's brother, that's someone's son, that's someone important, and how privileged we are to try to go help that person, you know. And so we had intelligence where we thought this guy could have been being held, and I was in the operations center that night, so I was not on this operation, but out goes the SEAL platoon to go try to, you know, capture bad guys and free the good guys. And the SEAL platoon was walking into the target. You know, the big decision we make as SEALs is like, do you land helicopters right next to the target and make noise and go fast, or do you land far away and walk slow and sneaky and quiet on your way in? There's pros and cons of each. But this particular night, the guys walked about 6 kilometers into this I don't know, 3 or 4 like mud huts in a village. On the way in, I'll speed up and tell you the fast version of the story is that the SEAL platoon was shot at from multiple directions with very heavy machine gun fire. And Luke, the point man, went down. He was hit in the leg, and Luke was trying to scoot himself back. And this isn't a story about Luke. This is a story about the next guy, Matt Roberts. Matt had to make an instantaneous decision. Matt had to decide whether he moves forward in that crazy gunfire to go help Luke, or if he moves back and saves himself. And Matt did what I think any SEAL or anybody in the military would do, which is he just instinctively moved forward in that gunfight. And on his way to go save like Luke with a 6 or 8 foot, movement over to Luke, Matt gets shot in the arm. Almost basically thinks he's lost his arm. He tucks it into like his leg his belt, so he doesn't lose it. And then he steps again and gets shot in the leg. Same thing. Now he's got one good leg and one good arm. That's the optimist way to look at it, you know. And it's funny, I didn't even think about that, but that's just the way that SEALs think about things. You don't think about what's bad, you think about what's still good. You know, it's really kind of, I don't know, I never thought about it that way, but you're focusing on what you still have. And Matt still had one arm and one leg, and that's all he needed to get Luke and to drag Luke to safety. Matt and Luke are both alive today. And I've often thought to myself, since I retired in 2013, what makes somebody like Matt do that? What is it? Is it a flag? Is it democracy? Is it, motherhood or apple pie or Chevrolet or whatever that saying is? What is it that makes somebody do that? And I'll say it's none of the above. The thing that I figured out is that the reason Matt did that was for one reason: it's love for his teammate. I wouldn't have used the L word as a 35-year-old SEAL commanding that at the time, but as I've thought about it, it's no question it's what it is. It's love. And so we do things for each other. And when you think about what does the nation need, right now, we just immediately get so polarized and like the other people are wrong no matter what. No matter any dichotomy, I won't get, divisive at all, but I'll just speak very abstractly. You pick any issue or anything and it's like America as a whole is so instantly on, like, you're either on my side, you're either with me or totally against me. And it's just not how we think about it. It's not. And so when we think about like a guy like Matt, what would he want? Or even worse, friends of ours who aren't here. They would want us to understand that what democracy really is having a bunch of people with a bunch of different opinions who can all talk about those opinions and have a process to land on the majority, the best decision, the best opinions, the majority, and then if you're in favor, you don't need to celebrate and gloat. And if you're out of favor on the thing, then all you can do is accept that there was a good process and keep getting your views out there and keep being a participant in our nation. And so that's what people want. And so when I think about what mission-driven and living a life of purpose isn't necessarily about any one particular issue. Purpose is kind of about process in some ways. How do we as humans think about our impact that we give, that we make on other people? I'm often reminded that, what my grandfather told me when he was still here. He said, Mike, when you're having a hard day, the only thing to do is go find someone who's having a harder day and go help him or her. We're all going to be down at times. But the thing is, as a group of friends or colleagues or neighbors or library patrons or whatever it is, there are some people in this room who are relatively up and some who are relatively down. And so how do the people who are relatively up help the people who are relatively down? That's the question. And that's what we do in the SEALs. And the thing that takes is leaning into hard conversations and saying, how are you? And actually meaning it. I used to be fluent in German. Now I'm conversant, I would say, in German. But in German, when Germany, if you say "Wie geht's?" how are you? The Germans actually want the answer. They actually, like, if you say "Wie geht's?" and walk by a German, they're like, wait a minute, what just happened? But in America, if you say, hey, how are you? And you pause to listen, you're weird. You're like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. How do we say, how are you, and physically or virtually put our hands on people's shoulders and look them in the whites of their eyes and say, no, really, how are you? Because that's all that matters. There's another day to make another dollar or to do another thing or whatever. It's what matters is whether we're helping each other enough. Like I said, people often say, like, thank you for your service, and I say thank you for yours, and how are you serving and whatnot. I often reflect back on the period a few years ago when all of the conversation was about kneeling for the national anthem at sporting events. Remember that? Everybody had an opinion. I'll share with you mine. My opinion is that I would never in a million bajillion years, in a lifetime, kneel for when the national anthem is played. When I'm home alone watching the Bills game the other night and the national anthem was playing, I stood up at attention by myself and it brought me to tears. The national anthem makes me cry. It just does. And so anyways, when I think about, see, I even distracted myself there in this monologue. But when I think about this issue, I would never kneel. But the thing is, if you would kneel, then that's what I fought for. That's why my friends aren't here. Because you all get to make your own choice. And it is not on me to judge you for the way you want to live your life, as long as it's legal, ethical, moral, we could all debate, but legal is our framework. And so as long as we're living that way, we sacrificed so that everybody can make their own choices. And so that, I think, is like, to me, I think that's the right way to think about it. Like, how do we have differences and then still come together? So I want to be mindful of time and make sure I promise that we'd have like opportunity for Q&A. Or I hope people are like getting their fastballs and their curveballs ready for me. But I will also say that in life, and in Mission Driven, what I thought a lot about was decision making, because we all make decisions. And if I was with you in an elevator and I said, "Hey, nice to meet you. Who are you?" That answer is a reflection of all the decisions that you've made in your life. And I think a lot of times people are very make decisions without a lot of rigor behind them. Think about career decisions you've made. A lot of times, like, let me use SEALs when they're getting out. They call me and they're like, "Mike, like I just need help. I'm going to transition. I'm going to get out of the SEALs. I just want to work with a really good group of people on a really good mission that has a lot of impact." And I'm like, "Dude, don't we all?" like I can't help you with that. Like, that's great that you do, but like, that's not life advice or transition advice. How do you make that real? That's what's in the pages of Mission Driven. How do you make that real? That process is in the book. And so when I think about people transitioning and having impact, like, do that. Like, there are a series of exercises in the book where I ask that, like, say it out loud. Like, who are you? It's a hard thing. We get tongue-tied when we answer that question. We can describe other people really well, but like, it's hard for us to think about that. And the thing is, if you have your values and your characters and what's important to you set, then when you're faced with opportunity or decisions, you have something to diff from. If you don't have that anchor set, how can you run the diff function on what you're doing? You can't. So a lot of like SEALs, when they're getting out, they'll say, if they've taken it further than what I just described, it often sounds something like, "Hey, I got these two things. I know a guy who has a thing, who has a business, who needs somebody to do this, and I know another guy who has got another thing," and you're like, in a very bottom-up way, it's like, I've got two opportunities in front of me, and I'm choosing between two things. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, step all the way back. If you're going to do that, start in the abstract and think about what are the abstract kind of concepts that drive you. What geography, industry, quality of life, opportunity to learn, compensation, like all these different factors. And while this sounds very job-centric, it's also just intended to be very life-centric, because every one of us are doing every day is re-choosing what we've been doing in our previous days. We re-choose that, or we choose to do something else. And so understanding how to be intentional about our choices so that we have the greatest impact and that we are the happiest with ourselves. And trust me, from somebody who has been, faced with being forced to think about what this life really means when it ends, probably I would say 5, 6, maybe 7 very, very, very real times for me. The thing that you are thinking about is that summation of all the decisions that you've made, and I just don't want anybody on the planet to have any regrets about what that is. And it sounds grim. I don't mean to be grim about like end of life kind of conversations, but like, that's just a framework to look at it, because use that to energize your life. The 120 years that I hope all of us have. I have a lot of friends that didn't have that long. And so that's what I poured into the pages. I'll say one more thing before I shut up and go to questions. Like you heard, I started a nonprofit that pays off mortgages for Gold Star widows. Have been very privileged, like commercially. I'm unapologetic about trying to get overpaid to speak in public, because I donate every penny of speaking when I do get paid. I'm here because I'm here for free tonight, by the way. I'm not, please, I don't want the library. Did the library spend a whole bunch of budget on me? No, zero, I promise. But no, when it's in the commercial world, I'm unapologetic about trying to make money for the nonprofit, and every single penny from Never Enough and Mission Driven goes to the 1162 Foundation. And as Sean will attest to this, these are the best days when you get to not only pay off one of these women's mortgages, but when you get to fly down and put your hand on her shoulder and say, hey, do you remember when Kyle did this, or when Chad did that, and when he overflowed the toilet on Christmas morning, and or when he thought that he didn't tighten the front wheel on the bike quite hard enough for Emmy, and she did a front flip when she was learning how to ride the bike. Like, all these things happened in the houses that they're in, and to be able to keep these families in the houses where all of the love is a lot more than just financial. And to be able to also, by the way, pay off some mortgages that have been forgotten, or because there's not, or some of the people have died by suicide, is really consequential. Because a lot of these women wonder if the nation has forgotten them. And to be able to really say, this isn't about Mike showing up and paying off a mortgage. This is about 1 million Americans behind me, and me just as the voice that day to remind them that America cares. That America cares about you and thanks you every single day. That's what, for me, when you talk about like who am I? I am on the planet to serve. And I am on the planet to help these women. So anyways, I appreciate you. I think hopefully I just sold a bunch of books. But no, listen, seriously, I'm not good at asking for help. I'm trying to be better at that. But anything you can do to help Mission Driven get out there in the world is incredibly appreciated. I really, you want to buy them for your organizations, or I'm very available. So I'm incredibly appreciative of being here. But let's kick it over to like Q&A, if that would be okay.
You can raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone.
First one's always the hardest. Come on.
We've got one back here.
We got one in the front row. Okay.
Thank you. How in pressure situations did you learn to control your emotions to stay focused?
Great question. I think it's a little bit of nature and a little bit of nurture, but certainly SEAL training, we go through 6 months where we have big, ugly guys yelling at us and making us feel uncomfortable. And so you start realizing what's actually important and what's not important. And so by really appropriately dialing up pressure in a training environment, you realize that you can handle a lot more than you think. Like, we bring students, SEAL students, beyond their limits. We get them comfortable. We bring them beyond their limits again, get them comfortable. And we do that over and over. And right now you're thinking, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, you stretch your limits in training, and it's true, but that's not the main point of that story. The main point of that story is we're constantly making people uncomfortable, so that when they are uncomfortable in an absolutely unknown situation, you start to develop the ability to stay calm and understand that calm breeds calm and excitement breeds excitement. And when your brain can slow down and calm down, you are way, way, way more likely to successfully navigate whatever situation you're in. So I think you could be sitting there and say, well, okay, great, I'm not going through SEAL training. But just think about it in your own life. Think about any sort of like time that you get into a hard situation. That is an opportunity to grow. 99.9% of our lives, we're like comfortable, we're fed, we're in nice clothes, it's warm, we're dry. But that 0.000 whatever 1% of life, when we're truly uncomfortable, is really when our character comes through. And so that who do I want my daughter to be? Well, I want her to be whoever she wants to be, but like what as a parent I want her to be able to be is to be able to, in those really hard situations, have that equanimity and the ability to really lead in a situation so that you can create that positive impact for people around you. So I think a little is nature and a little is nurture. There's one in the front row here in case you're...
I'm coming.
Hi, thank you for coming all the way to New Canaan and speaking with us. Can you tell us how we could donate to your organization? Did you say 1162? And how did that name come to be?
Well, okay. Thank you for even asking the question. And I will tell you, the 1162 Foundation was literally named by that guy right there. Because we were spitballing ideas. Because as a board, we have no paid employees, but you need 3 people to incorporate. When it's not incorporate, to establish your nonprofit, and so myself, Sean, and one other guy are the board. And Sean said, "Hey, Mike, I woke up and I had this idea. Kennedy started the SEALs on January 1st of 1962. January 1st kind of symbolizes renewal for these women. What if we just call it the 1162 Foundation?" And I thought it was amazing. And like Sean's always been smarter than me since college, so it was like done. That's a wonderful name. A couple things. Number one is if you just Google 1162 and Give Butter. There's a site there. There's not a lot out on the website. This is not an organization that, like, we don't actually proactively really go solicit funds, but when people ask, there's a website that you can go to and make a donation. It's hosted by givebutter.com, and so when you buy Mission Driven, there's also a QR code for it in there. If you want to do that, or reach out just to me, I can send a note with like physical addresses or other ways to donate. And so and 100%, like I cover all the admin costs, like Sean and I do from our own. 100% of donations go directly to a mortgage. It's not like 96 or 99.9. It's 100%. So thank you for asking, and very kind.
So thank you very much, Mike. I see that the subtitle of your book, The Path to a Life of Purpose. Now that you're on that path, where is it leading you in the future?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I think the thing that I've learned is that I'm always building the foundation, and the walls and the roof can come later. I very genuinely don't know. I'm here to continue to serve. I'm in I've always said I was a White House fellow in 2008, 2009, caught the last 6 months of Bush, the first year and a half of Obama. My first 6 months the program in the White House Fellowship just lasts a year. I handled Obama's first foreign policy showdown. It turned into a movie called Captain Phillips, which I've never watched. But I've got a note in my house in Westport that says, "Mike, great job on the Somalia situation. You made a family super happy on Easter. Love, Barack." And I'll tell you, I also just had a house fire. I never thought it would happen to us, but in our house, my wife and I we're displaced right now. Don't feel sorry for us. We're great. Hayes family's good. But we were doing some outdoor work, and a subcontractor thought it would be smart to use a propane blowtorch to defrost the foundation. And like 4 minutes later, the fire trucks were all there, and they put out but lots of thick smoke and all this crap. So I didn't lose that letter. I didn't lose any mementos or anything like that. So I'll tell you the thing that I've always thought is have a chapter of public service, which I did, have a chapter of private sector life where I can build enough of a personal balance sheet to be able to go serve again, work for $150K a year in government or just something so that I can be free to do that. And so that's the chapter that I'm on right now, and I will serve again. I don't know how. I know that you can sit there and be like, okay, he's running for office. I have no idea. I just know the big man upstairs has a plan, and it'll unfold, and I'm just here to help and serve, and it'll happen whenever the time is right and whatever way is right. Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry.
My question to you is, thank you for this. You're a great speaker, and you're doing a good job. But if you did not get into the Navy SEALs, you were going to be a naval officer. What would you have done?
I would have become a supply officer, done 4 years, and gotten out.
In the rear of the gear.
Because that's what exactly, like, learn logistics, and then like it's kind of like a business school degree, and then and then punch.
And then my second question is, how many of these mortgages do these people need? I mean, how many are out there? Because I hear about this all the time.
Yeah.
And some people, kids, they passed away, they had no families, but there's a lot of people with families that have lost, and so how many people are out there in America
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. I wish I knew the specific number, but I can tell you that I've done the math in my head of the, think of it like I think of it like 3 concentric circles. The people who I knew and loved personally, then the people who were in the community that I know, and then just the military as a whole. I don't know this number, but this number I need about $8 million more, and I'm working on it. And I'll get there. It's just a matter of when. Thank you.
Hello, Mike, can you, or back here? Back here.
Yes, sir, yeah, sorry.
Thank you for your service. I would say.
Thank you for yours.
I'm just curious if you have a view on where you think the military in the United States is now versus when you left it, X years ago, and just how you feel about where it is, and not to get into politics or anything, but just, generally how it, what the state of the.
Look, it's a great question. And so let me start by saying I'm still very, very close to the military community, the intelligence community, and I still serve the nation in various ways. I feel like the U.S. military is by far an institution that is imperfect, but it's the least imperfect institution that the world has, and so I will tell you that I am personally very good friends with the leadership of Dan Kane is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was a White House fellow 2 years before me. I was on the phone with Dan, 2 weeks before he got the call to be the chairman, because he was retired, and we were talking about, hey, I'm at a private equity firm that has 600 portfolio companies, and he's an amazing, amazing leader, and hey, how do we think about this, that, the other thing? And all of a sudden, he got the call. Mitch Bradley, who is the 4-star in charge of Special Operations Command, like our lockers were next to each other in 1994. Like, I know these are wonderful humans, and so I will not get political. But what I'll tell you is, like, remember when there was in the news maybe a month ago, like the double strike on the boat in Venezuela. That is a civilian issue where there is civilian policy. The military carries out the orders of the civilian, like the legal and lawful orders of the civilian leadership. And there is no way, and as a commander who has made life-ending decisions about 1,000 times on do we drop a bomb from a plane to the ground, I am 100% certain that Mitch Bradley is doing that with such extreme caution and care that I have total confidence in the military as an institution. So yes, is there pressure? Is it imperfect? Yeah, so is everywhere. But you know what? The people at the absolute top of the military could not be better humans and professionals. I know we have one over here too, man. Okay. Sorry.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for coming this evening and sharing your experience. So you touched on this a little bit. The question is about the transition from the military to civilian life, which is difficult in general, and especially from the elite sort of arms of the military into civilian life. So what challenges did you face, and how did you deal with them?
Well, I had a very atypical transition. I mean, so I don't really compare myself. Like, I am not the norm. When I took command of SEAL Team 2, and I thought to myself, we need the spouses to who stay behind and have way harder jobs than we do, because they don't know what risk we're taking, and they're taking care of absolutely. They're becoming, 2 parents or super parents while all the SEALs go overseas. And I thought, if we can just get 10 hours of use or lose babysitting hours every month for these women, or 99% women, that will be amazing. And some back-of-the-envelope math was like, I need to raise $800,000 to do that. I started a program. We have a Navy SEAL Foundation, which is a nonprofit. As an active-duty naval officer, you're not allowed to raise funds. But I had friends at Goldman. I'm a lifetime member of the Council on Foreign Relations. I called a friend. I said, listen, I'm going to come up, and you have me speak wherever you want, and you're going to ask for the money, and you're going to raise $800K, and we're going to do great things for the spouses. And so we went overseas, and you could give these women $300 more per month, and they wouldn't spend it on themselves. They wouldn't spend it on 10 hours to do what they want. And so we set that. I got that program up and running. It's still running. However many 2012. So 14 years later, it's still one of the largest programs for the Navy SEAL Foundation. I started that, and so what happened was, I was speaking at Goldman, and then, I don't know, 9 months later, I'm in Afghanistan, and I get asked to speak at a really big event for Goldman, and I'm giving you maybe too long of a version, but Lloyd Blankfein and Gary Cohen came up to me after and like, man, that was amazing, you're coming to Goldman. And they threw a really, like, a large number that I couldn't even ever imagine. Like, they're like, yeah, you'll make, $1 million a year at Goldman, da, 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 da. And I was like, okay, done, but I met Jamie Dimon when I was a White House fellow, and he said, Mike, whenever you're getting out of the SEALs, please make sure to let me know, and I'll be glad to help. So I thought, okay, if I've got an offer from Lloyd, I got to talk to Jamie. And actually on the back of this book, you'll see Jamie, this is one of 5, maybe it's 6 books that Jamie has blurbed. Never Enough was on, I didn't apply for this or anything, they just found it, but Never Enough is on the JP Morgan summer reading list, and I'm hoping this will be next summer also, but we'll see. And so I had a really good problem on my hands of like JP Morgan or Goldman. Called a really good friend of mine who was at Bridgewater, Dave McCormick, who was the president of Bridgewater. Dave was at the Treasury when I was at the National Security Council. I said, Dave, I need advice, phone a friend. Dave's like, okay, come to Westport, and I'm only giving you my advice in person. So I had dinner with Dave, and then he sprung Ray Dalio on me and Greg Jensen, the leadership of Bridgewater. I made an interesting career decision to go to Bridgewater. So that's how I landed in Westport. I'm sorry, that's way too long of a story, but as Fairfield County, is very familiar with all of these names and places, and so that's kind of how it happened. And so I just count myself so fortunate. I'm all about giving back because I've been so fortunate.
We have one way back here, dead last in the room.
This nice lady in the corner over here has been like softly raising her hand. I just want to make sure that we also get to the white sweater.
So, Mike, thank you so much for coming and talking here to us. I've bought a book already, so they're ready. And I've
sorry, only one? Or did you say sorry?
Sorry,
I'm just kidding. No.
I should have said my first.
There you go.
And I got Give Butter pulled up on my phone with your 1162 Foundation Inc. I'll donate to that. Thank you. Just quickly, story 9/11. Where were you? Obviously the spirit of Corps was probably very strong at that point in time.
It really was. I'm 6'4", 230 pounds, and have never been God's gift to the pull-up bar. And in the SEALs, they find whatever you're not good at. So I am the guy that looks like a flailing porpoise doing pull-ups or something, So I was like trying to do maybe half of a pull-up or something when we got the news of what had happened. And everybody wants to go do something right in that moment. We were just sitting in America down in Virginia Beach, like okay, do we work out harder? It's so. But very quickly thereafter, the pace picked up for obviously the next, decade and a half or so. And thank you very much, very genuinely, for buying and supporting. That's super nice.
Mike, the great football coaches try to make the practices harder than the games, and I wonder whether the SEALs in their training get close to that model.
We absolutely do. In fact, it's interesting because when I'm in a SEAL platoon doing things that SEALs do, I feel very normal or very inadequate, like we're all just, okay, we're just doing what we do. As a commanding officer, like I would often go on the missions or watch the training, and from the outside, and I would just be like, oh my gosh, like I'm one of them. I know it sounds weird, but it's like when you see it from the outside in, you're like, wow, these guys are freaking amazing. But even with that being said, and me being super impressed with the SEAL platoons that were under my command, they'd come back and I'd say like, okay, here's all the things you did wrong. And the thing is, if any SEAL platoon goes out and trains and doesn't train to failure, it's a missed opportunity. And I could give you countless stories where one thing that happened in training literally saved people's lives. Like, oh, remember a year and a half ago when it was raining, instead of taking the boats out, Jimmy Graham said, hey, let's make sure we train on the radios. Everybody blindfold yourself, take the radio apart, put it together, and then tune into 282.75 and make comms with me on the other side of the SEAL compound. And as soon as you make comms with me, the exercise is over. Ready, begin. And it's a race. Okay, like that's what we did that night. Well, like that saved that let us call a helicopter in Kosovo in a very hard situation in 1999 that like unquestionably saved our lives. So the question is really, are you spending every minute that you can being productive? And if people come back and it went too well, I'd say you just missed an opportunity. So we're absolutely like that.
Heather, are you going to the corner? Okay, and then we have one back here.
waiting for me?
Please. I know this is going to be the hardest one. It's like the...
So you sort of alluded to something that goes with my question, which is in both of your books, which I bought before I came and read, you talk a lot about decision making. And when you were talking about Goldman and Jamie Dimon, and you said, I got a call from somebody else, and I took that one. That's an instantaneous decision making in my head. And I think in your books, you talked about instantaneous decision making in your job, in your SEAL jobs. And I'm wondering if there was any kind of training that you did for that kind of instantaneous decision making.
Such a great question. Thank you for building that one up and building the suspense. And look, so when I'm running a special operations task force in Afghanistan or making a career decision, it's all the same framework. The first decision in decision making isn't the decision, it's when do you have to make the decision. And so I think about it like this. Go get as much information, the highest quality, highest volume of information as you can, as fast as you can. Then at some point, the time associated with doing that costs you more than the marginal utility of the improvement in information. So there becomes an inflection point where the time costs you more than the extra information you're getting. That's when you have to make your decision. And so I've had people come and say, okay, sir, we have a SEAL platoon in a gunfight. They want to drop a bomb like now. Like, okay, like let's get as much information as we humanly can because we never want to harm somebody we shouldn't harm. I'm proud to say that out of and I know we're on YouTube or whatnot, but like the 1,000+ times that I have personally been responsible for that decision, we have never harmed somebody we shouldn't harm. And so the reason that happened was because, number one, we get the when to make the decision, right? It gives you the opportunity to get as much information as you can without costing yourself excess. Then you're also separating yourself as the input and the decider. Sure, I'm the commanding officer, but if every decision is the same as my input, then why do I have anybody around me? So you have to say, sometimes I'm going to make decisions that are different from my input, and I value different inputs. And so a quick story, I very vividly remember one evening when Marshall, a SEAL lieutenant of mine, and my organization called for an airstrike because they cornered like 4 or 6 Taliban into this building that were literally trying to kill them and coming very close to killing them. And honestly, with all the information I had, I was like, okay, I'm a yes. What I did was I turned and I asked a woman who's our public affairs officer, somebody that most SEAL commanders would never give the time of day to anybody who was not a SEAL. And I said, hey, you've been seeing us make all these decisions all this time. What do you think? And she's like, well, did you think about this, 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 and this? And I was like, oh, actually, good point. Really good point. And I turned to our lawyer. I said, hey, nickname is like Judge. Hey, Judge, like, what do you think? He's like, I actually see it slightly different than she does, but it gets me to the same place. I don't think we should do it, and here's why. Do. So I've got 2 very smart humans who don't think like me, who don't have experiences like me, who are saying something different and giving me pause to think. And the quick version is, I said no to Marshall that night. My decision was different than my input. And I don't know, I know Marshall was probably frustrated or whatever, but we don't argue things out. It was just like, okay, there's got to be a reason for this. Marshall pulls off target, goes his different way. 20 minutes later, we're flying in another unmanned aerial vehicle over the target, and we see a bunch of Taliban walk out for sure, but we saw maybe 12 or 15 or 16 women and children walk out of that very same building. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, thank goodness for decision-making systems like that. Because I couldn't live with myself if I harmed somebody that we shouldn't harm like that, an innocent person. So I think the framework for how you make decisions is really important, and can you follow it during hard situations? And so honestly, I don't see anything as an instantaneous decision, because you always have time between time now and time decision. There's always, I don't care if it's 1 second, that 1 second you can do a lot of good. And if you can turn that 1 second into 3, you can do a lot of good. So that's very quickly, that's the framework for making decisions that I think about. And I did write about that in the first book. And thank you for staying awake while reading that. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
We have a question back here.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. When I signed up, I had no idea you dealt so much with U.S. military widows. So I have a kind of specific question, which is, are you familiar with the forgotten widows? And if so, do you know of any path or organization that helps women to get their pensions, like my mother?
First of all, thank you for being familiar with what is obviously an incredible organization. I am personally not familiar with it, but I will tell you that there are no widows that we forget. You know, a lot of times, like when I post something on LinkedIn or whatever, it was a great day in the Hayes family when I had more followers on Instagram than my 24-year-old daughter. Like I don't talk trash very much, but that day was a big day in the Hayes household. But I'll like hashtag never forget. I will like that is our job and our duty is to never forget the sacrifice that people have made. I mean, super quick other, like, I know it's not related to the question that you just asked, but, you know, I don't brag very much in life. One other time that I bragged was when Mission Driven came out. It debuted as number 4 in the world. And in the book world, basically all your pre-sales count as week 1 sales. So a book's strongest week is week 1. And then the USA Today is actually the list that matters. It's just pure data. It's pure numbers. And then that's all genres lumped together. Fiction outsells nonfiction, usually like 10-1. 2 books ahead of me were fiction, and one was a cookbook for like $4 with a lady had like 10 million followers on Instagram. And so I was like, I was, you know, feeling pretty good about being number 4. But I called my wife and daughter, bragged like excessively, like it was ridiculous. And 10 minutes later, not even 10 minutes later, in the family group chat, the group text, my daughter had drawn a little thing of like Olympic podium with like 3 people on the podium, and Dad is number 4, way on the outside looking in. So it was fabulous. But maybe I'll crack number 4 again. But thank you for your service with that organization.
Mike, thank you. I was at your talk 4 years ago at the club. At the time, were you running for public office?
No, I never have.
Okay, so that's my other question. Are you considering running
I'm
for
open
public
to serve.
office?
Like
because if you are, I'm your campaign manager.
I'm in. I would love to serve. I need to build a little bit of balance sheet first before I can do that. 20 years of like, you know, I'll serve again somehow. So we'll figure. You tell me where and when, and I'm there.
Do we have time for one more? There's one more back here.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for coming tonight. This has been great. I guess I have more of a personal question. I have a son who his goal is to be like a Navy SEAL. Seems 6, seemed 2, I don't know. He tried to explain it to me, but I'm just wondering, when you decided or when you found out this is what you wanted to do, when you made it, advice for, like, what did your mom or your family? I mean, I don't know what will happen in the future, but especially in this day and age, it's quite scary. And I don't know if you can offer any advice.
Advice to mom is let the service happen in the way that it should happen, and the world will work out just fine. I will say my mom hated the title of Never Enough. She's like, Michael, why in the world am I going to go buy, only a few people call me Michael, but why am I going to go buy a book that says that I'm never enough? But that's the mindset. That comes from a saying, you're only excellent if you know you're never excellent enough. That's actually the genesis of that title. And so the orientation, congratulations that your son has a view and goals and like wants to do something, and like, gosh, like what greater privilege is there as a parent than to have your kids have real goals that they can articulate and work toward. Like that's so congratulations to you for raising a child in this crazy world to want to serve in whatever capacity. So my compliments, and my advice is really like the way you do the small things, like the large things follow, and I'm really good at giving advice and terrible at taking it myself, but I'm biased, but I think I know 2 books that really will help.
Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it.
Mike, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was such a privilege to have you 4 years ago at the Country Club, and I say we're just a fortunate community to have him in our presence and in our sphere. And you've certainly given us so much to think about tonight in terms of transitions and managing change. I don't think you're going to have any trouble fundraising. Did anybody have that impression with that kind of a Rolodex? I think your fundraising's pretty well set. But I will say there's something that Mike said tonight, and which will just help me transition into what I wanted to announce to you, and that is sometimes we have to make decisions where more information is not giving us the kind of marginal utility that we're hoping for. And so if we can just put up on the screen, our next big event is a book that many of you will have perhaps read already and seen. But I just wanted to announce that we're going to be welcoming Andrew Ross Sorkin to the library on April 20th. He's going to talk to us about 1929, which was a time where there was maybe an absence of good decision making. So I encourage you all to, you're the first to hear of it. We haven't even announced it in our newsletter, and you know how these things go. When Peggy Noonan came, we had 800 people on the wait list. So if you have any interest in seeing Andrew and joining us for this very special evening, which will be a fundraiser for the library, I'd just like to encourage you all to come. So thank you, Mike, again.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.